Hey everyone, welcome to this INF 272 tutorial where today we will be discussing importing and exporting of data. In particular, we're going to have a look at how to import data from an Excel file using the EPPlus library, and then also to export data that comes from your database into an Excel file. Okay. So here I've got my application running, where we want to get at. So we've got, this is essentially a very basic student grade administrator. Doesn't have a lot of functions built in, for obviously just because the focus of this tutorial is very narrow. So here we've got a list of students. We've got 31 students with a name, surname and age. And what we want to be able to do here is imagine you had a different system. So let's say some student administration system, a system that manages all the different students that are registered for various courses at the university. Just as an example, you've got a second system that specifically manages the grades, like student marks. And the two aren't directly integrated. And in that case, the need arose that student information like the name, surname, student numbers, whatever, in this case it's just name, surname, age, be imported into the grade center. So on the view, we've got a nice little import button here that just, when you click on it, it toggles the view of a little form, and on the form you can basically upload a file, which I'll show you that it works just now. And once you import the file, then it's supposed to load names from that file. So the file looks something like this. So let's say this is the Excel template that comes from your external system. Basically name, surname, age, and it should import these names, these students' records directly into your system. Okay, so that's function number one. And then function number two is, let's say now for various students, various modules and different assignments, you've gone ahead and captured a whole lot of marks or student grades. And perhaps for another external system, you need to export these marks so that they can be visualized or presented in a presentation or whatever the case may be. You want to export the list of student marks. So this is a direct view from your database, which I'll show you the design for the database now. When I click this button, it should actually download an Excel file. Alright, so let's quickly have a look at our database design for our example. Very, very simple, just for the purposes of this tutorial. We have student records on the one side and module records on the other side. Under a module, you have various assessments like class tests, practicals, group assignments, what have you. And then for a particular assessment, a student can have a grade. So we have the student assessment associative entity between them. So very basic ERD, but it will work for what we want to achieve. Alright, so let's just hide that away. So let's start with the import. So how do we go about importing student data? So getting this list into our database. So let me just stop the program, and let's quickly just have a look at the view. So on the view, I've got a button there that is our import button, and that import button calls a toggle import function, which is JavaScript that essentially shows and hides a particular div called the import that has the ID import block. Inside of that div, we've got a form, and that form points to the import students controller method of the home controller. Its form method is post, so up until this point everything is exactly the same. The difference is, however, that the form has a enc type multi-part form data, and whenever you do file uploads, as we discussed in class, so whenever you have an input of type file inside of your form, then you need to make your enc type of your form multi-part form data. Okay, other than that, you just have your input of type file, which allows you to choose files. This you can also add some extra checks and attributes to make sure that the user can, for example, only upload Excel files or whatever. We haven't gone that far in this tutorial. And then you've got your submit button. Obviously, when you then click the submit button, then it goes to the home controller, to the import students function. Now you'll notice that there's nothing really different about how this controller method is defined. It's simply a straightforward action result return type, import students, nothing weird about that. We actually get to access the file through the request object. So with every call from the view to the controller, there's actually a HTTP request object that essentially holds all the information that's passed through from the view to the controller, and that includes an array of files. Should any files be uploaded, then it will be loaded into this request object's array of files, and therefore we look. So if request.files.count is greater than 0, meaning on the view someone actually uploaded a file here using this input, then this value will be greater than 1. And then we simply access that the first, so in our case we expect that the first item in that array is our file, because the user is only going to upload one file. We don't do heavy checking, just for the purposes of this example. Alright, and then you've got your file. And once we've got our file, then we've got our our Excel file in memory, then we can start working with it. And as we discussed in class, when we're working with Excel in particular, then the EPPlus plugin is a very good plugin to use. It makes working with Excel files very simple. So just to give you an indication of how you can go ahead and include the EPPlus and use it, because EPPlus is not a built-in Microsoft or .NET library. You have to go and specifically add it. So you need to go right-click on references, go manage NuGet packages. You go and browse for EPPlus over here. Okay, in my case, I've already installed EPPlus, but you'll go to browse, you'll browse for EPPlus, it will come up as an option. When you see that option, there will be a little install button. You just simply click on install. Just make sure that it is this EPPlus by Jan Coleman, create advanced Excel spreadsheets using .NET. You'll just search for that under browse, click install. It'll go through the process of installing it, and make sure that after you've done that, it is listed under your installed packages. It will also then be one of your references listed here. Right, so then in your home controller, what you need to do is at the top where you import different libraries, you need to say that you're using the Office Open XML library, and that comes from the EPPlus reference that you've included there. Alright, if you've done that, then you will be able to use this class called Excel package, right? And you instantiate the Excel package class, utility class that's included inside of the EPPlus library, and you pass through as a parameter your file. So remember the file that came through from the view, and then you just say .input stream. So we discussed the difference between the various streams. So what is a stream? Stream is just a abstract implementation for a array of bytes. So it's basically helps you to manage files in memory. Okay, so by providing that to your EPPlus or your Excel package, then you've opened up essentially your Excel file, and from this point onwards you can work with this package so that you can modify or read, in this instance, your Excel. Then what we want to do is to actually access the correct worksheet inside of our Excel file. So I'll just open that up. This is how our Excel file looks. We've got one sheet called sheet 1, and it includes all the data that we want to access. We don't have any other sheets that we want to access. So we say that we create a new Excel worksheet object, and we set that equal to the first worksheet. So you go package.workbook.worksheets, and we use the first worksheet. Okay. So in this case, this particular EPPlus package that we use is not 0 indexed, so the array starts not counting from 1. Then we open our database connection. When we're reading from this Excel sheet, our goal is to actually write data to the database. In this tutorial, I still make use of SQL connection and SQL commands, and I would like for you guys to go and have a look at how you would have implemented this if you used Entity Framework instead. Okay, so back to our function, we open our connection up here. Obviously everything happens in our typical try catch finally block, where in the finally we close our connection. Then what we have to do is write a nice for, so that we can essentially loop through our rows. So the first row that we want to start at is row number 2, so for int row equals number 2. So we're going to essentially put our row pointer there, and then we say and carry on until worksheet.cells at row column, the value is not equal to null. So we, in other words, will continue to go down the sheet until such time that the value is equal to null, and then this for loop will exit. And with every iteration, we obviously have to increase the row counter. Okay, so what do we do for every row is we want to get from the first column, we want to get our name. From the second column, we want to get our surname. And from the third column, we want to get our age. Right. Then once we've got those three values, then we want to create an insert command. In that insert command, we want to put our name, surname, and age values, and then we simply execute our insert command. And we do that for every row, and at the end of all of that, then we've got all of our values in the database. Very, very simple, very, very easy to use. I guess the hardest thing here is just to keep track of where you are in your Excel. So this Excel is just a two-dimensional array, and you should just visualize it as such and always keep track of what is your current row, what is your current column, and what value are you busy working with in your code here. Okay, so let me just quickly run that to show you how it actually, what that code actually results in. So we add our student table, which comes directly from our student database, and then we click on our import button that displays the form. We choose our file here. But let me just close this file because it's still open in the background, so it might have a problem. So we then choose our import example, Excel. Obviously I haven't implemented any validation, so it's always a good idea when importing data that you validate, so you don't just select any file. Okay, so then we open that one, that's loaded, then we click on import, and if we scroll down, then all of these extra names that were in that file have been added to the database. And to just show you that I'm not lying, that it is actually in the database, let's quickly look, view, object explorer, tables, student, select top 1000. There we have our values from McDonald all the way to Tennyson. And it started at McDonald and went all the way to Tennyson. Alright, so there are various ways in which you can use this power for batch importing. Like in this instance, if someone wanted to insert all of those names, they might have wanted to do that one by one, where this allows for a quick batch import. Okay, so let's move on to the export functionality. So for that we have this grades view. The grades view essentially has a table with a student column, a module column, an assessment column, and a grade column. So we want to know what is the grade that a particular student got for a particular assessment that falls under a particular module. Okay, we display that by reading a list of student grade VMs, and the student grade VM is obviously made up of student, module, assessment, and grade as well. And let's quickly go to our grades controller. I've created this long inner join SQL statement in order to actually build up or get from the database the data that I need in order to populate each and every student grade VM record. Okay, so it's really just a particular way to visualize the data from 4 different tables. We visualize it in one table. So this is just supposed to show you how you can, how whatever you have on your interface doesn't necessarily have to map 100%, you know, to the tables you have in the database. You can also transform the data a little bit. But that's any case, that's just a by the way comment. What we really want to get to is we want to be able to export that table into Excel. Okay, so we show this table, but then above we've got a nice little export button, and that export button quite simply just calls the export grades method of the home controller. And when we go to that method, we want to sort of do exactly the same SQL statement that we did when we loaded that data, but instead of returning that data, we want to write it to an Excel file and have that Excel file download. So here I've just gone ahead and created a file download name, which is the name of the file that we're going to download at some point. Just to make the file name unique every time we download it, I included a date time. I also include a content type. So this content type is what you need to put in if it's an Excel file. Then I go ahead and start using EPPlus again. I create a new instance of the Excel package. This time I don't put anything in the form of a parameter for the constructor, because we're not working with an existing file, we're creating it from scratch. Then we go ahead and we add a new worksheet called grades to the workbook that's associated with this package, and we call it WS. So from here at this point forward, we can work with this WS to access various cells in that worksheet. Okay, Then we go and create our command so that we can go and call the data from the database. We open our command, we execute our reader, and what's interesting here is instead of iterating through the reader line by line, we use this new class called data table. Okay, and I can load the entire content of this my reader, so all the results from the database I can load into the data table. So I just go and create a new instance of the data table, and I say data table.load my reader. Okay, and then with the worksheet I say, okay, starting from the worksheet.cells A1, so that would be let me just open Excel. Let's say we have a completely new blank Excel file. So now we're saying starting from cell A1, which is the topmost leftmost cell, we actually load from data table, which is a simple method that you can just call, and you just go load from data table your data table as a parameter, and that will go ahead and load all of the contents of this data table into your Excel. Then I just have a line here that will auto fit columns. So it makes the size of your columns big enough to show the contents properly. Okay, and once we've done that, then we've got all of the content into our Excel as we want. Then the last thing that we need to do is actually to save the file and to have it download on the user side. So in order to do that, we have to go and create a new object of type memory stream. So memory stream is, again, a stream is something that manages byte arrays. So in any case, you create a new instance of the memory stream, and you save your Excel package into that memory stream. So the contents of your Excel package essentially becomes like a byte array. You set the file stream.position to 0, so whenever anything starts to read it, whenever the download starts, so that it starts right from the beginning of the file. Okay, then you create a new object of type file stream result. So this is the thing that's actually going to be returned back to the user, which will result in a download. Okay, and the first parameter you pass through is the file stream, and the second parameter you pass through is that content type that you specified earlier. And then finally you just set the file stream results file download name to the name you specified up here. And finally you go ahead and you return your file stream result. And once the user then clicks on that button, the Excel will be generated and downloaded thanks to this code. So let's quickly go and have a look. So we go to our grades, student grades. Basically this is what we want to see, except we want to see it in an Excel. So I simply click this button and it downloads my Excel file very quickly. And if I open that up, we've got our student, module, assessment and grade columns, and it's all exported into your Excel file. Very simple and straightforward. Right, again I say this is one of the most easy and straightforward applications of this approach. Of course you can get way more complicated with it. You can start combining data from various tables. You can have various use cases for this, depending on, once you export data, what is that data going to be used for. But with these basic skills in place, you can start really becoming creative in how you apply your importing and exporting of data. That's it for this tutorial. Look forward to our next one. Cheers.